Welcome to the channel. I'm Robin Clevett. Now, we have been using this simplified hinge jig for ages now, and indeed I've been successfully selling them. So this is a thank you to everyone who's kindly bought them and supported the channel via buying these as well, because the money that we can make out of these we can put into taking the time to film content without charging memberships and that sort of stuff. So that's my first thing. Thanks very much for everyone who's bought one. Now, we've actually machined up a full length one as well, and we're just about to use that at the moment. And what that means is we don't have to mark anything now, because the full length hinge jig, we just set it flush with the top of the door, clamp it on and route out the hinge positions, a pair or a pair and a half. We're doing a pair and a half. These are fire doors, they're nice and heavy. So we're using a 102, the larger of the butts. And we've got it on the frame. So we've also attached it. Let me show you how we've attached it to the frame. Here is the full height hinge jig. So it's like 3 hinge jigs in one length. We've got a spacer, okay, at the top. Now, we're quite generous on these. So instead of using a 2p gap, we're using a £1 coin, okay? So it's roughly, this is what it looks like when it's hung. Here's one. This door's had nothing shot off it at all. This is the margin. This is a bought lining. So these housings are exactly where they were when they come out of the factory, and it gives you the tolerance you need not to have to put a leading edge on, okay? And now this is particularly useful because most of the doors we use are pre-finished now. So we have pre-finished oak, we have pre-finished walnut, even pre-painted doors. And if you're a carpenter out on site, you know how much liability there is just unwrapping them, getting them into the building without knocking or scratching them. So things are changing in the sense that years ago, we'd shoot a door in, so the lining we'd make exactly the width of the door, and then we'd shoot the door in, we'd put a leading edge down the hanging side so it wouldn't bind on the lining, and that's how we would do it. And we'd use a 2p piece gap. Now it's more like 3 millimeters, okay? More like 3 and 3.5 millimeters. But it's perfect for a door. This has still got all its primers on it. We haven't had to take anything off it at all, just off the bottom, which is pretty normal. So that's it. There we go. Now we're going to do that here. So we've got our router set up with the cutter. Let me just go and get that for you. So it's just a bearing cutter. This is my own cutter, so it's got a really nice tungsten carbide tipped cutter. The reason why we developed this simple hinge jig, because we didn't want to use a cutter which had a guide bush, because often when you mark a hinge, you've got to then set it exactly in the right position. We wanted to use a bearing cutter that basically follows exactly the hinge. This is exactly the hinge position. So it's a matter of then just popping in the router, routing them out all together, taking out the corners. You can leave the jig in for this as well. Sharp chisel, just take the corners out. Transfer this straight onto the door, keeping it flush with the end of the door. That gives us the gap. Route them out. Now I would say if it takes 15 seconds each to route these out, and it takes another 15 seconds each on the door, in a few minutes you can have your door and your lining routed out, all ready for the hinges. Pilot the hinges up, screw them on and swing the door. Indeed, that's what we're going to do right now. So the beauty of this is you can actually leave the jig in, and the reason why there's these little relieved circles is so you can actually get your chisel all the way in to finish those off. Now, if you're using a firmer chisel which has a nice square edge, it's much better because of the actual how fine these beveled edge chisels are. They sometimes run into there. So you just want to follow the cutout basically and pare them back. And you can actually do it once it's off as well. So you can see I'm just using the chisel straight in there. I mean, it couldn't be any easier. Again, it's a single process. Or if you like the corner chisels, you can take them off and use the corner chisels. That's it, perfect. Anyone can use these jigs. I mean, I've got mechanics have bought them, plasterers have bought them, bricklayers have bought them. Anyone who wants to have a go themselves. All you need is a little tiny router. So that's it. So we've actually screwed this one on, but you can clamp it, but we just thought we'd put the screw in it as well. The architrave will cover the screw holes, obviously. I'm going to make sure those screws aren't sticking out while we clamp it on the door, obviously. You want to scratch that door. So this is also isometric, okay? So the distance, if you use it on a left door or a right door, that's exactly the same size. So we'll transfer this now onto the door and we'll pop this on, flush with the top of the door. That's it. We're going to put it on there, we're going to clamp him on. Nice and flush. Let's get a clamp in the middle too. Got a nice little, these are some of my favourite clamps, these little XC5, I think they're called XC5, there we go, XC5. Pop those on as well. Now we're ready to go. So we're going to do exactly the same thing. Now what these moulded hardboard doors, they're very typical, but that hardboard's particularly hard. Now if you try to go for that with a chisel, as you chop with a chisel it furs out and sometimes it's just a little bit more difficult because this is generally softer than the hardboard. The beauty of a router is it's just an absolutely perfectly clean, flat cut. So let's go for that too. Look at that, so nice. They just fall in. These hinges all vary slightly. Some of them are 0.5 millimetre longer than others. You'll find that you'll get 3 out of a pack and they'll all vary slightly, but we've tried to make the jig refined enough that it will fit nearly everything. Sometimes they're a tiny bit loose and sometimes they're a tiny bit tight. You can't do anything about the engineering of the hinge. That's it. And we'll just pilot those up. We'll change that chuck. And we'll swap that down to there. Ed's told me how to use this drill. He's teaching me a lot of things. Right, okay. Just got to be careful with any of these screws because they're quite soft. You don't want to get them hot. You want to make sure you've got a decent pilot bit. And, you know, just don't over tighten them. This is why this particular drill isn't like an impact. You can use an impact if you're gentle, but most people do, to be honest. But this is absolutely perfect. So we've set these hinges about 1 millimetre deeper than flush, because the actual throw that they give, the gap, is quite big. So if you were just setting them flush, you'd realise that you'd be hitting on the closing side and you'd have to deepen them. So it's always worth setting up a couple of bits of timber and checking first. If you're especially like if you're going to do a lot of doors like we are. That looks beautiful. And also you can pilot with a bias this way, so when you do the screwing up, when you finally screw it up, it will pull it tight to our cut. If you watch that close up there. I mean, you can't get any tighter than that. It's absolutely lovely. Now before I screw the bottom hinge on, or the top hinge even, I'm going to pilot the lining out with it, because we need to do that first. But this is door hanging made absolutely simple. You know, there's hundreds of jigs out on the marketplace. And with regard to this long one, am I going to make it to sell? Not sure. The little one does exactly the same thing, but we may do. We may do, no guarantees. There we go, let's go and pilot up the lining. So the door's holding itself on those clamps, which is nice when I get the screw. So I just want to get one in each hinge just to line everything up. And then we'll ease off the clamps slightly, pop the bottom one in, located really nicely, and then I'll pull the middle one in afterwards. Hopefully if the lining's nice and true, it will line up. Or if the door's not bowed, it will line up. There's a lot of things that can catch us out. And that's it, middle one. Pretty nice. I'll pull that one in. So I'll put 2 more screws in just to get, so I've got 2 in each hinge, and then we'll just try it and see if we've got to ease the door at all. What we're hoping to do is not have to ease the door at all. That's it. Let's move our clamps out of the way. So I've got all of the screws in, and basically that'll put all those butts nicely into those housings. And then what we're looking for is an equal gap. So this is the factory edge of the door, factory top, factory side. And what we want to do is when they're shut here, we want to see the same margin all the way around. And I'm pretty happy with that. And that's a bit more than I used to leave when I was an apprentice. It was all 2p, as I said a minute ago. And it's just a little bit more now. But by the time you've got paint on everything, linings, doors, it's probably wise to leave that sort of gap as well. And these are 44mm thick. And as I say, if it's like pre-finished, you don't want to be cutting anything off those. You want it to go straight home. So that's it. Pretty easy, pretty quick. Now we're going to get the rest of these done. Put some handles and latches on.